Bastards chat with
It's
fucking
about to go live. Okay, yeah, we're on air. Progressive Voice wants to take the civility out of civil discourse. He thinks Razorfist is an anarcho-capitalist. He thinks the left wants open borders, is a strawman. What will be the cost of the Space Force? A Republican's bill effect on healthcare, explained by my favorite news writer, Avik Roy. This and more. I am your host, the Dark Conservatarian, and this is my co-host, S-Man Speaks. Say hi, S-Man.
Hi, S-Man.
Hey, come on, don't be another Spurg.
Says the fucker wearing dark clothing in fucking July. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so yes, Kyle Kulinski. Actually, this is a fairly old video that I am going to be screen sharing right now. Okay, this is a fairly old video, actually. As you can see, it was like back in November of 2017, but I only like within the last month came across it, and I thought to myself, oh man, this is just ripe for the responding right here. I mean, mostly because there is one gaffe that he says about Razorfist in particular, but we shall take a look at this video now, shall we? You ready, S-Man?
Ready as I'll ever be, because this dude's depressing.
Yep. And so the title of the video goes, Kyle Kulinski has to be aggressive and rude in debates against conservatives like Razorfist. So yeah, it is just openly wanting to be an asshole, and civility is out the window apparently with this guy. If it wasn't already out the window beforehand, but anyway. So
Kyle had a debate with Peasants.
Holy
I would call him, I believe he's an anarcho-capitalist, which is the craziest you could possibly get.
okay, and that's where the biggest blunder in this video is because Razorfist said explicitly in the video or in the debate that he was not an anarcho-capitalist. Yeah, I also saw this in like the comment section of another video talking about Razorfist. Somebody made the comment he's an anarcho-capitalist that debated with Kyle Kulinski. I'm thinking to myself, wait, what? Where are you getting this myth from? He said explicitly that he wasn't. Well, more like implied, but it cannot get more of a clear implication than this. So I have it pulled up right here. Originally, I was going to do an edited response video to this, but then I thought, hey, fuck it, it ain't that much worth it, so let's just do it live. So anyway, this is the clips of what went down, as he explains.
Conservative government is easy to quantify for all Kyle's pretense to anarcho-capitalism or whatever helpful little straw man he decided to erect there so he could easily fell.
Okay, so he kind of mistakens Kyle Kulinski for saying that he was an anarcho-capitalist. When, if you go listen a little bit earlier in the debate, or actually earlier or later, a little bit later, he explains that it wasn't a straw man because he wasn't accusing him of being an anarcho-capitalist, but only using anarcho-capitalist logic on some talking point. But anyway.
I argue for a government that is just big enough that we have a military for defense, viable borders, police, and oceans that are composed of 80% antifreeze, while keeping the government small enough that it can't seize your personal property, force you to engage or disengage from private commerce, doesn't print currency until it's outstripped in value by Mallow Cup money, and to the civil libertarians among us, isn't so intrusive or overbearing that it can tell Dick and Lance they aren't allowed to have butt sex babies. You know, it's a form of government that, at the end of the day, rather than telling you what you are supposed to do, allows you to live your life, steps back a bit, and doesn't overstep its purview except when absolutely necessary.
Of course, I was not strawmanning. You're the one who brought up about how all government is force, and I'm simply relaying the fact that that is the main argument that they make in anarcho-capitalist circles. That's where that came from.
Okay, so yeah, that's the first bit of ridiculousness that came from Sahil, the progressive voice. Here, let me check the chat very quickly. Nothing going on. That was the first bit of ridiculousness, is that he thinks that he was an anarcho-capitalist when clearly he said so, that he wasn't, and so, yeah. And it goes to wondering, was he even watching the debate? Or was he even paying attention to the debate as you were watching it, Sahil?
Yep.
Sorry, you didn't have much to say?
No, I mean, I just please plug in your headphones again. I can hear reverb pretty bad.
sorry. I'm going to pull up control room so I can mute myself whenever a person wants to speak. But I'm going to have it unplugged so that people can listen because I do not know how to work OBS for the life of me. But
if you download a YouTube video, or at least I think that's how it works, hit Control O. I think it lets the audio play for itself, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I honestly do not see where Progressive Voice here, Sahil, you know, I don't see where he gets the idea that Razorfist is an ANCAP. I mean, you know, there's like some people who might have conservative views, but they might be ANCAPs, and then there's some who are not. And I would like to see proof, like a screenshot, a quote, or a timestamp, or all three, with the, you know, with this claim that Razorfist is an ANCAP. Otherwise, it's just, you know, a claim without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, is what I'm going to say.
Okay, so you said press Control O to have the audio play for itself. Are you talking about when working OBS, or does that work with Google Hangouts as well?
Google Hangouts as well. I remember seeing Humane did a tutorial about it.
All right, let me try. I'm going to replug the headphones and Control O. It just brought up documents for me.
Play the video. Just go back 5 seconds and play a bit of it. Oh, I can't hear it. I guess if it's downloaded, it might work. I don't know. Just check out Humane's tutorial later, I guess.
All right, so then I guess we won't try to attempt that again. But anyway, let's get on with it.
Really stupid to be an anarcho-capitalist, but
you'd be really stupid not to pay fucking close attention to the debate that you're assuming. Shit.
A lot of people, you know, and Kyle did seem visibly irritated and angry, and you know, people were like, you know, I wish he wasn't such a.
There's a little thing called self-control, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit, I should have been more self-controlled when I was dealing with Voltaire and shit like that, and Ham when they'd cut me off, or Voltaire was being a spaz. I'll admit I should have used more self-control. But hindsight is always 20/20, and there's always room to improve. And civility itself, it's like, you know, if you're angry about injustice, you don't have to take it out on people, you know. Oh God, I'm gonna have to close Twitter. Fucking hell.
Oh, what's up? What's the deal?
You're getting mentioned in the fucking chat. I'll just post it in this group chat. What you got going here? Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so as I was saying, let's just continue.
And stuff like that. But I want.
Oh, I remember what I was wanting to say. To Ham's credit, or well, to your credit though, S-Man, it's not like you were being so uncontrolled with Ham, because he was cutting you off in that one debate, you know, that was about private property rights, you know.
Yeah.
But Voltaire, yeah, you did kind of lose your cool at some points.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of want to talk about that because when it comes to these debates, it is more important than you think. Maybe you do think it's very important. It's very important in terms of the representation of the side and the ideas, because you may say it's very collectivist. That's how the world works, buddy, especially when it comes to parties and things like that.
Okay, well, you're making the case yourself for why people should be civil. I do not know what your deal is.
Yeah. Hey, Lonely Wolf.
Oh, yeah. So sorry. I guess that was rude for me. What's up, Wolf? Gonna be a bad wolf again and start posting dank memes?
That's the world we're in. So that's how the game is played. And when it comes to that stuff, it's extremely huge. Now, I think that it's okay if he's going to be visibly irritated and things like that. Because in those kind of cases when you're dealing with people who are so stupid, like Trump apologists, Trump supporters, and anarcho-capitalists, bro, you have to be that way. And because if you don't, what's going to end up happening basically is they're going to get away.
Well, if you do not try to keep your composure and be self-controlled and not be all name-calling and all the stuff that the people are saying that Kyle was being to Razorfist, you're going to end up with your opposition being rude to you, name-calling you, and it's just going to be an unproductive shout fest. This is the reason why we have the rule of civility. You depressed-looking hobbit, motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, here's the thing. You know, oh, I didn't see what he just said there, but I will say this, that it is important, like, the reason why I try to keep my debates civil is usually, you know, if it's going to turn into a shouting match, I'm just going to kick the person from the call, end the stream, and leave it at that, and it's just not going to be worth my time. Only once have I ever considered even ejecting people from a debate due to how unproductive it was getting. Probably should have for my own patience, but, eh.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to rearrange some stuff. Anyway.
All right.
They're going to lie about a lot of shit. And then basically...
Well, it seems to me that you were lying about him being an anarcho-capitalist, so should I just be unhinged as well?
That face, though, but yeah, honestly, I mean, I understand getting unhinged if people are lying about your political positions or what you're saying. Like, I will call out a motherfucker, you know, for strawmanning me or smearing me or just being intentionally dense. But
well,
if they're being
he was being inaccurate in representing Razorfist beliefs. So
yeah, I hope he gets razor fisted by Razorfist for just spreading lies.
Oh, sorry. I realized that I was still muted there. I was still trying to arrange stuff so that I could, like, see the chat and access my own mute button at the same time. But anyway.
Yeah.
You're given a possibility for a complete idiot, and people are going to say that person won. But really, they're just lying. And because you were trying to be nice, you then call them out on their bullshit and say, hey...
There's a difference between rebutting and calling them out and being a complete and utter asshole. Yeah, asshole.
Yeah.
That's wrong, and you're going visibly angry. You know, Kyle was kind of pushing, being like, what's not supposed to let him misrepresent the statistics. And, you know, Amazing Atheist said, yeah, it's like those kind of things have to happen in these kind of debates. It's very vital to someone being perceived as they won, because that then changes how people feel about ideologies and, you know, voting and things like that. It's very key for independent.
Yep. Yeah, just a pretty monotonous pretty monotone voice right there.
Yeah, honestly, whenever he tries to smile, like I just feel uncomfortable. I feel like I need to. I don't know. I just need to ensure that I get as far away from him as possible. Like, seriously, like he looks like You ever heard of that meme when you try your best but you don't succeed? He is the poster boy of that shit.
And yeah, as I always wanted to say, I know I have a little bit of a monotone myself, but I at least try to compensate for that. So Heel doesn't try to compensate for that with any charisma. Like, the guy has zero, it seems, almost. So the next video that I wanted to respond to Sahil, the progressive voice, on was a claim by Dave Rubin that he responds to. The left wants open borders, and he calls that a straw man, says that he debunked it, and he's talking about some hilarious Koch brothers irony exposed. And so I'm not, just FYI people, I'm not a fan of the Koch brothers, honestly. And I think I did hear that the Koch brothers are rather lenient. Actually, no. I do remember reading an article once, it was like a while back, of how they wanted to be lenient on immigration policy. So that's like one of the implications, yeah, that the Koch brothers might be partially for open borders. And of course there are other types of crony capitalists and corporatists who want to, like, break the law in order to get their cheap labor, you know? But no, this is not a defense of the Koch brothers or even of really Dave Rubin, but of the claim the left wants open borders, because it just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. But let's just continue on. Look at the chat here. The Lonely Wolf says he looks like the co-star of a granny porn.
Oh my god! Wolf! Bad Wolf!
Thank you, Wolf, for the enlightenment right there. Anyway.
Bad Wolf. I'm gonna need bleach for my eyes now.
As always. So
now you guys know I did a video about Dave Rubin's speech at the University of New Hampshire, in which there were multiple protesters who tried shutting him down, and I came out to his defense. Some people are saying it looks staged, but, you know, that's sort of speculation. And while it may seem like that, I'm not really sure it is. But either way, I mean, I defend, you know, his free speech. But
and I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that and give him just a little ounce of respect. Sahil, I mean.
As I was going back to edit up the clip to show you guys that part, I caught a really ridiculous straw man done by Dave Rubin. And it's going to be such a straw man, and it's going to be so ironic. So, check out Dave Rubin here saying that the left wants open borders.
It'd be nice if she left, but she's still here, okay? Nobody leaves. And this is the irony. So you have this set of people now who go on and on about identity politics and everything that's wrong with America, and we're this evil patriarchy and we're this evil racist society. And they demand at the same time, I love this one, they demand at the same time that we should have open borders so that I guess the other people can share in the horrors that are America. That is not sensible. You see what I'm saying? It's not.
Since when does the left want open borders? This is the biggest straw man ever, because...
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. I've met a lot of anarcho-communists or extreme leftists like Owen and, you know, like people like that.
That's one of the first things that came to mind. I mean, wasn't Owen McDonald like debating against you on the immigration debate that he wants there to be no borders, which is essentially the same as open borders?
Yes, yes, it was this Marxist view of land and how it's all arbitrary borders, and it's like, bitch, the border is not a social construct, like cement is not a social construct, and shit like that.
Okay, and the reason why we have borders, the reason why we have nations is because not everybody in the world is going to get along together. And the thing with Owen, with my observation of his beliefs, what he thinks of the world, or what he thinks the outcome that he wants the world to be like, it seems like a pipe dream. Like, he is one of the key ingredients to his society. It sounds like that he expects the world to get along, like international socialism. And he's repeated many times that he wants little, if not any, government at all. And so, obviously, if there's going to be no government, you're going to expect people to just freely, out of the kindness of their heart, just start sharing each other's stuff, and there to not be any dissidents in the socialist society, when obviously there are. You're not going to convert every single working class person to be a socialist, you know? I mean, you're going to have the blue-collar working-class capitalists fighting against Antifa, along with, perhaps, the rich as well.
Damn right, motherfucker.
And it's because of those ideological, what's the word that I'm looking for? Those ideological drifts, that's not the word that I'm looking for. Those ideological splits, why we have countries, so that we can make sure that people are not fighting as much with each other, and so that people can like live in their own preferred society, like they have more options. Well, I mean, they might not have an option to go to a certain country that might be close up to everyone else, but that's a different point. Yeah, because of ideological differences, why we have countries and ultimately borders, so that we could prevent people that want to cause harm to people within the country, you know. And I also have like 3 other articles that goes talking about examples of leftists that want open borders. And so, yeah, I mean, let's just get this out of the way. Obviously, not all of the left is for open borders. I will give to Sahil that maybe it was too vague and too broad of a statement from Dave Rubin to say the left wants open borders, because obviously not everybody on the left wants open borders. I mean, take Cult of Ham, for example. He wants to, like, close off the United States from any new immigrants to come into the country. I mean, you've heard him say that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to play a clip of Bernie Sanders advocating for, well, not the same, but for some border enforcement. Let's just take a look at this.
They say the left wants open borders, but nobody advocates for that. But
there's another broad and generalizing statement right there, but this time not from Dave Rubin, but from Sahil, as he's saying that nobody wants that. I mean, he's obviously applying the word nobody to the left, but that is an outright I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's lying, but it's utter stupidity of what
that is a good way to sum it up. And you know, I don't get why Sahil here needs to smear people with like false labels and shit, and needs to put words in their mouth. Like, I swear, like, people like that, they do deserve to get
desperate and has almost little to no substance in arguments. He like piggybacks off, for the most part. I mean, I think he'll every now and then have his own original argument, but for the most part, piggybacks off of other people's arguments, like Kyle, for example.
Wow, honestly, that is not news to me.
Anyway,
here's Bernie Sanders responding to this question, and he's going to make a very interesting point that's actually true.
Yeah, like as if Bernie Sanders is the spokesman for the entire left. I mean, you have people that are, you know, a little bit more social justice-y, like the extremist feminists, which I don't think Bernie Sanders fully sympathizes with. I mean, you have the extreme BLMers out there who were against Bernie Sanders, do not want him to represent them, and so on and so forth. And you have like a very center leftist. I mean, Secular Hawk doesn't even like Bernie Sanders. That's another example. So Bernie Sanders doesn't represent the entire left. I do not know why you bring him up.
That's serious. It leads you to conclusions that in the U.S. are considered out of political bounds. Things like sharp racism and the level of immigration we permit, even up to a level of open borders, sharply
open borders. That's a cult borders. The idea, of course.
Well, perhaps, but like I said earlier, I'm not denying Koch brothers being lax on immigration.
See, that's a right-wing proposal, which says essentially there is no.
But I don't care. Wait, what? Where essentially there's what? Did he say where there's essentially no United States? Let's re-listen to that.
The idea, of course. I mean, that's a right-wing proposal, which says essentially there is no United States.
But it wouldn't. But
I don't know. I think he needs to get the cotton balls out of his mouth to speak a little bit more clearly, because I cannot make out what he was saying right there. Could you, S-Man?
No, honestly, it's this is kind of why usually I try not to. Like, in my case, I could probably do these type of streams because with my computer, my earphones have a microphone on it, and I could just turn the volume up to 100, keep the earphones out of my ears, but I could still hear it. But yeah, Bernie Sanders needs a dental job. This guy, I'm not too familiar with him, but Bernie Sanders sounds like his teeth are fucked.
Yep.
It would make a lot of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably like dig into some research and find a few countries that are all open borders. I mean, I don't want to outright say that Europe is being all pro open borders right now, the European Union. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference between accepting refugees from other countries and just completely having unregulated, full-out open borders. So I don't want to like, yeah, I want to be careful with what I say. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In a nation state, or a country called the United States, or UK, or Denmark, or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people.
So as Bernie just broke down there, it's not the left that wants open borders,
it's the Koch brothers and libertarians who want a free movement of labor.
Okay, yes, Reason TV, I recently made a response video to Reason TV on immigration where Nick Gillespie was kind of advocating for open borders, and they actually made plenty of other videos that are for lax borders as well. I mean, nobody's denying that there are people on the right, like center, moderate right, or whatever, that are all for, you know, just allowing illegal immigration to happen so that they can have cheap labor, or even just full out nonstop let full on open borders happen.
So, yeah, and honestly, another good reason why people another reason why people tend to support illegal immigration is more voters. I'm just gonna say it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can get as many immigrants into the country so that they can bring the wages down. So the people.
Yeah, and I think that there was I mean, I cannot remember who exactly it might have been, but I think I might have heard some Democrats say that they want to allow, or at least implying that they want to allow more immigrants to come in so that they can have more Democrat votes, you know?
Yeah. California is a pretty good example of it.
So anyway.
Who represent the ideology of classical liberalism / libertarianism, which is what Dave Rubin believes in, those are the people who argue for open borders. I remember the Cato Institute, which is...
Yeah, and there are also people on the left who want open borders, as we will read throughout this.
Heavily funded by the Koch brothers. It's massively libertarian. It's a libertarian think tank. They put out this article that said that basically most domestic terrorism was right-wing. And it was during the times of the whole Muslim ban that was going on. And while, of course, that's true, but what they did was they stuffed in like a bunch of like random killings that people would do. And it was because they don't want bans when it comes to immigration. They don't want any restrictions on immigration because they want as many people to come in as possible so that the wages can go down. So there's an inherent massive irony in what he's saying, because the people who are funding him, Learn Liberty, which is one of the...
Okay, I'm not going to go on any further because I think he just going to keep on reiterating the talking point of how Dave Rubin's people are the ones who are for open borders. But to better articulate the point that there are some people on the left who want open borders or advocate for open borders, this from The Guardian. And The Guardian, of course, is more of a left-leaning website. I mean, you probably know this, S-Man. I do not know if you know that for certain, but...
The Guardian, yeah, I wasn't entirely sure if they were like left-leaning or right-leaning in any way, shape, or form, but it wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
I think Sargon of Akkad has made plenty of response videos to them regarding primarily leftist social justice. You know, I mean, there's a right-leaning social justice and then there's a left-leaning social justice, but more they be speaking for left-leaning social justice, and Sargon of Akkad would constantly be making response videos to them. Plus, whenever I go researching a specific topic or whatever on an issue, they would always be putting out articles that are arguing for the left perspective. So yeah, they're pretty left-leaning, and so yeah, you got a leftist site that is not only advocating for open borders, but is encouraging the Democrats, the U.S. Democrats, to be just full out for open borders. Because I don't think that the entire party is for open borders, but they are so lax on immigration that it is easy to confuse them for being for open borders. Like, especially so lax when it comes to illegal immigrants coming into the country. All right. The Republican position is coherent, but racist. Racist.
Okay, I'm getting really fucking pissed off about that. It's like, okay, first of all, the Republican position on immigration, like, they're not targeting Mexicans, and that assumes that Mexicans are just going to be brown-skinned people, and I think that's pretty racist. It's the same shit with Islamophobia is racism. You're assuming that all Muslims are brown people, and that is racist. You know, like, there are immigrants who are white. There's immigrants that have, you know, skin of various colors. Like, to me, thinking that it's strictly targeting one is racist, in my opinion. I really do think it is.
All right. So, and I want to reiterate that there might be a select I mean, if people can like point out some Republicans that are racist, that are want to prevent people from immigrating based on color, well then I'll probably like full on admit to that. But the thing is, with another good portion of Republicans, they want to control immigration not out of color but out of national sovereignty. You know.
Yeah, and honestly, I just want to make this point clear. Coming to this country is not a right. It will never be, and I don't want it to ever be a right. You know, coming to this country is a privilege. That is all it will ever be. Either come here legally or fuck off. My only exceptions are natural disasters, war, and shit like that. Other than that, hashtag family should stay together. Well, hashtag then don't come illegally.
All right. The Republican position is coherent but racist. The Democrats need a forceful pro-immigration rebuttal to beat it. Okay, the thing with the pro-immigration, supposed pro-immigration statement right there is that it's kind of ambiguous. I mean, it states like you cannot... It could either imply that you're pro-open border immigration or you're for controlled immigration, which that is what people like you and me are for, is controlled immigration. Make sure that it is at a moderated rate and that we do not just allow people to come in willy-nilly without having their papers checked and whatnot, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Although the U.S. Senate is holding a debate on immigration policy, the Republican leadership has already settled on an extreme position that will substantially reduce all immigration to the United States. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the debate will end this week and indicated that the Secure and Succeed Act proposed by Senators Chuck Grassley and Tom Cotton but voted down by the Senate on Thursday 39-60 was the only bill that could pass the House and be signed by the president. Senator Cotton said on Tuesday that it was a non-negotiable best and final offer in the face of this recalcitrance. That's a new word for me. Recalcitrance. The Democrats must rethink their current incoherent immigration policy and argue robustly for more open borders. Aha. So there is your example, Sahil, of some people on the left advocating for open borders. So it's it's a rather broad statement, again, by Dave Rubin, but it's not an outright straw man. You're being just an utter clown, Sahil.
Recalcitrant means having an obstinately uncooperative attitude toward authority or discipline. So I don't think this word was entirely applied correctly in that case.
All right. The Republican plan would have allocated $25 billion for border security, ended the diversity visa, and substantially restricted family reunification visas in exchange for a 12-year path for citizenship, including good moral character checks for the 1.8 million people who were qualified for the DACA program. Overall, the plan would reduce legal immigration to the U.S. by 35%, or more than 350,000 people per year, mostly from Latin America, Asia, and Africa. It is logical to support immigration restrictions if you believe that It is logical to support immigration restrictions if you believe that the United States is fundamentally an Anglo-European culture with Western civilizational roots. What the fuck? That is not the reasoning for why we support immigration restrictions. That's a straw man right there.
Yeah.
Or at least for half of us anyway. For the other half who think that it is strictly for white people, sure, whatever. But that, yeah.
Yeah. Like, honestly, my fundamental reason for criminalizing immigration, like illegal immigration, so I don't mean to bring up that old bitch. She was like, the Trump administration is criminalizing illegal immigrants.
You're talking about Barbara Lee?
Yeah, that dumb bitch. The reason why I'm against illegal immigration is I've always viewed it as an insult to those who immigrate legally. I've held this view my entire life. And yes, I do take a more conservative approach to immigration, among other things. But yeah, I do find that illegal immigration to be morally abhorrent. And if anyone wants to call me racist for it, they can suck my fucking dick.
Or perhaps a straw man. It's a little bit too harsh to say, but it is a rather ridiculous overgeneralization.
Yep.
The reason why we support immigration restrictions is because we do not want to be dealing with other countries' felons, criminals, murderers, rapists. Yeah, and by the way, that's not to say that every single fucking immigrant is a murderer or a rapist. Just FYI for all them people that want to take me out of context there.
Yeah, just tell them to eat shit and die. I mean, there's certain people, being civil with them is a fucking waste of time.
Well, okay then, Sahil Habibi.
Oh, that's his last name. Oh, he must have been picked on in school a lot.
This is funny, but have you seen my full live stream with Lapis?
I've seen about the first 10 minutes of it. I've not, like, shit's been busy, my bro. What happened in that?
Okay, you should have listened more to it, because we got talking about progressive voice at one point, and I said, I mentioned the full real name of the guy and said Sahil Habibi, and I said, yeah, try to say that name with a straight face, and she tried to say it herself, and she couldn't help but laugh trying to pronounce that last name. It was just the funniest shit ever. So anyway, this logic drove the United States' earliest immigration laws, from the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to the Immigration Act of 1924, that established quotas to protect a racially defined notion of who could enter the United States. Subsequent immigration laws removed the explicitly racist elements, but have continued to limit the number of immigrants, the vast majority of whom are not white. Okay, the reason why we restrict it is not because they're all black and brown and Asian and or whatever else have you, but the reason why we restrict it these days is because we have a bigger welfare state. I think that immigration should be restricted in general as a moral principle, but the fact that we have a massive welfare state, that only just doubles down on the logic that, yeah, we should, like, restrict immigration a little bit more. I mean, you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh shit. I'm gonna DM you something really quickly, and then you can read it after the stream. But yeah, honestly,
what is it?
I'll explain off air. But it's but yeah, I just get annoyed when these people start bringing these straw men saying that it's racist, and it's like there's
or
no,
that's
like,
racially motivated.
Yeah, it's like it's absolutely not, like, you know. If
at least for people like you and me, anyways.
Yeah, like Jeff Sessions, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I think he's actually against legal and illegal immigration. Illegal immigration, I can agree on. Legal immigration, I just tell him to fuck right off. I'll have to check back and see if, because I think that's where I think I did see something about that.
Yeah, I'm not so certain, but the main reason why I probably don't support him is because of his stances when it comes to drugs, and plus the fact that he pushes for the death penalty for people who just, you know, deal out massive amounts of drugs, who just deal out drugs in general. Like, yes, it's against the law, but in the first place, I don't think that it should be illegal to, you know, deal drugs. I mean, I'm against the drug war. I'm for drug legalization, particularly when it comes to marijuana. But, and more importantly, I'm not for the death penalty when it comes to people just dealing the dope, you know? Anyway, I mean, even if it is against the law.
Yeah.
The core of the Democratic position on immigration is harder to discern. Democrats are in favor of some border security, but definitely not a wall. Okay, yeah, and that's the reason why I give the benefit of the doubt right there. I cannot make any broad claims that the Democrats are definitely for open borders. Democrats favor some immigrants, such as dreamers, but accept the status quo that restricts immigration from most of the planet. I doubt that, but okay. Since the Republicans have come clean on their desire to reduce legal immigration, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a country only has such limited resources to go out, so it only, and plus, you have to, like, let your current immigrants adapt to the culture of the country before you bring in more immigrants who are not yet adapted to the culture. Otherwise, you're going to have half the people speaking one language and not understanding the other half of the people in their native language, for example. legal immigration. Democrats should formulate a forceful pro-immigration argument in favor of open borders. Excuse me. Despite the vocal anti-immigration sentiment on the right, opinion surveys suggest most Americans support more immigration. A 2018 Quinnipiac poll found that 65% of Americans oppose building more border walls, and a 2017 Pew survey found that 63% believe immigrants strengthen the country. For Democrats, it is 84%. Okay, and I do not have any polls, honestly, to counteract that. Wish I had now, but that does not change my opinion on anything. And I don't think that a politician should buckle just because of, you know, ad populum.
Yeah.
We're almost halfway done.
Yeah.
Open borders could have an enormous positive impact on GDP worldwide. Wait, GDP worldwide? I never even heard those types of arguments. Even critics of immigration, such as George Borjas, or Borjas, I think it might be Borjas.
Mm-hmm.
George Borjas acknowledged this. The removal of immigration restrictions would indeed lead to a huge increase in GDP. Global wealth would increase by $40 trillion, almost a 60% rise. Moreover, the gain would accrue each year after the restrictions were removed. Given the clear economic benefits, the conservative Wall Street Journal ran an editorial in 1984 arguing for a 5-word amendment to the U.S. Constitution. There shall be open borders. No thanks. Over my dead body.
Yeah, and honestly, I think a coup would be justified to prevent this shit from happening, like the legalizing of open borders. Like, that is bullshit, and I think that anyone that is I know this sounds very unprofessional to say, but I think anyone that supports open borders is probably a cuck. I know I shouldn't really say that, but honestly, I think it's justified in that case. Like, at some point, you have to realize you're just a fucking sissy if you think that you know, open borders is justified. I think you have to be a complete puss.
You know, I think that overall that the word cuck is kind of a almost a useless word, quite frankly, because even more so than social justice warrior, because the way that I've heard it used in such context, it just boils down to a person that dares disagree with me, you know? Because I heard people say that apply the word cuck to somebody who is for gun rights, but then you have people who apply the word cuck for somebody who dares stand up against white identity and allows white genocide and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just used by all sides of the political spectrum against all sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah, and honestly, yeah, that's why I try not to use words that have little, that the meaning of it is like useless, like cuck or SJW or shit like that. I'll probably just make a video explaining that later.
All right. And you know what? I have actually read stuff saying that it would be costly to just allow illegal immigrants to openly flow into the country. I mean, and one of the things is that it costs. Sorry, I'm trying to like gather my train of thought here. But I read an article one time from CNSnews.com talking about how it would cost at least $5 million to for their tax returns, for when they go to file in tax returns with fake social security numbers or some kind of other identification number that I can't remember the title of it, or I think the initials were DCIN or something like that. But anyway, and of course, there are more other costs. I mean, Metal Minister, he's one of my subscribers. He actually messaged me an article one time talking about the full extent of the welfare costs of illegal immigrants, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with immigration because I like legal immigration. Like, I think immigrants can be a benefit to the economy in terms of, like, there's jobs in America that Americans sometimes are unwilling to do, like picking fruit in California and I think even North Carolina. But that doesn't justify, in my opinion, that's not an argument to justify illegal immigration.
Okay. The concern that some citizens might lose jobs to immigrants is not supported. The concern that some citizens might lose jobs to immigrants is not supported by research, but they won't have those jobs available because people who are not supposed to be here in the first place ultimately are ultimately preventing the jobs. Sorry, losing my train of thought here. Okay. The concern that some citizens might lose jobs to immigrants is not supported by research, but the thing is, if you leave illegal immigrants in the country, they would be preventing legal citizens from getting jobs when those illegal immigrants are not supposed to be here in the first place, you know? And I read an article going more into depth in this in my response to Reason TV on illegal immigration. Like, I think it was like at least, there's something in the range of 5 to 10 million people hired, or illegal immigrants hired, I mean. One study found migrant and native workers are employed in different sectors of the economy. Another showed that migrants create 1.2 additional jobs beyond the job they do because they rent an apartment, buy a car, and frequent local businesses. Oh yeah, and also I forgot to mention that the unemployment rate and labor force participation rate, it goes to show the people that actually need those jobs, the people who are more entitled. I say more entitled, not completely entitled, but more entitled to those jobs than some person who's breaking the law to get in or stay in the country. The claim that immigrants commit more crime is also false. Okay, that claim in of itself is, I'm going to say, outright false. Because the Government Accountability Office found that illegal immigrants overall per capita commit more homicides at a higher rate than the legal citizenry of the United States. Just as an example. I mean, even if they did not commit more crime than legal citizens, I mean, wouldn't it stand to be reasonable that to lower crime, to lower the amount of homicides, at least you deport those illegal immigrants, you know? You sound pretty busy, yes, man, honestly.
No, I'm just reading this and I'm trying to like, I'm trying to think about this from my own perspective on how to talk about this, like whether or not immigrants commit more crimes. Like obviously people will point out that, you know, people who were born here or immigrated legally might commit more crimes in either way. I mean, obviously I think that if you commit a crime, like if you immigrated here and you committed a crime, you should be deported and that's the end of the story. Or if you like this bullshit of this person was deported 5 or 6 times should be no one should ever like have that on their record. Anyone who commits a crime like and is deported and they come back illegally, keep fucking deporting them and or throw them in jail. I would be happy with throwing them in jail. And like you said, don't have them in these detention centers. Fuck that. Immediate deportation. Say, all right, what country do you come from, bucko? If they said Canada, all right, you're heading back to your Canadian bacon. Or if they came from the United Kingdom, like Owen McCuckold, then send them back to the land of crumpets and tea, you know.
The claim that, okay, I already read that sentence. One study found that 3% of migrants without a college degree are in jail, compared to 11% of the native population. Wait, okay. The amount of people that are actually punished for their crime does not say that there are, does not reflect on the people who actually commit a crime. I mean, this is pointless right here, especially with the Government Accountability Office stat that I just pointed out.
Darkon, I'm gonna have to go. I have a family emergency I got to deal with. I'll see you later. But thanks for having me on as well.
I'm sorry, yes, man. But
it's no worries. But thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Yep, you too. Okay, the Cato Institute calculated that the odds of being killed in a terrorist attack carried out by an immigrant are extremely low. 1 in 723 million. Yeah, that's the term that you use. You use immigrant, but are we talking legal immigrants and illegal immigrants, or are you talking about just illegal immigrants? You got to differentiate the legal from the illegal person. How many people would actually move if borders were open? A 2011 Gallup survey found that 14% of the world population would like to move to another country, with perhaps 100 million wanting to go to the U.S. What's that supposed to prove right there? That's supposed to convince me more that we should have open borders. I don't see the point of that. These numbers may alarm some, but these movements would happen over years or even decades. Furthermore, they are less than the rate of population growth in the United States in the late 19th century through migration. 30 million people from Europe arrived in the United States between 1815 and 1915. At the beginning of that era, in 1815, the U.S. population was only 8.5 million. Wow. I mean, that's remarkable to think about, the amount that the population has grown since then. Finally, there is not a moral or ethical reason to justify restricting the movement of other human beings at borders. Yes, there is. I mean, I just stated that illegals commit homicides at a higher rate. I mean, I'm going to be more specific with the stat. It's like 50, something in the range of 30 to 50 per every 100,000 illegals commit homicide. Or that's the rate for how many homicides are committed per 100,000. But for legal citizens, it is like about 5 in a 100,000 rate. 5 per every 100,000 people. It's not even close. Not even close. So there's that justification right there. We don't want other people's we don't want other people's murderers coming into the country. We do not want to deal with a higher murder rate in general. Plus, we just don't want to. And what about militaries? When it comes to militaries, immigration aside, another reason why we have borders is when countries go at war with each other with their secure militaries. That's another issue entirely in of itself. So that's another reason why we have borders. It is ethical and moral for us to have borders, damn it. Border controls harm other people by limiting their opportunities and by causing many to die when they do try to move. The thing is, if they try to go into a country when they full well know that they cannot get in themselves, well, they're kind of committing suicide in a sort of way. But it's of their own cause of why that they die. I mean, with the way that you're framing it anyways, so broadly like that. In 2016, more than 7,800 people died simply trying to move from one place to another. Today, Donald Trump and his supporters see migrants as the barbarians at the gate. However, future generations may look back on our era and see the people violently manning the gates as the true barbarians. The Republican position on immigration is coherent but racist, not completely. I mean, if illegal immigrants is a race, well, then I guess technically it would be racist. But last I checked, illegal immigrants are not a race. And yes, white people can be illegal immigrants as well. And considering the fact that we are against all forms of illegal immigration, including white people, I don't see how it's racist. The Democrats should reject the bill and argue for the politically popular, economically sound, and morally right position, open borders. Yeah, right. Sahil, you're silly. There's the Guardian advocating for open borders, damn it. The Daily Caller. The left goes all in on open borders. No borders, no nations, fuck deportations. That was the rallying cry of protesters demonstrating at San Francisco International Airport Saturday against President Donald Trump restricting immigration from 7 Muslim-majority nations. Okay, so this is like a leftist hotbed in a leftist state, or people from a leftist hotbed in a leftist state crying for the ending of borders. So this is pretty damning. I mean, just looking at the audio, or just looking at the footage itself, as we shall see here.
Deportation, no borders, no no nation, deportation, no borders, no nation, deportation, no borders, no nation, deportation.
Okay, so there is a massive amount of leftists right there who are crying for the ending of borders. In other words, crying for open borders. I mean, no borders, open borders, pretty much the same thing. So more leftists calling for open borders. Again, another piece of evidence going against you, Sahil. All across America, protests have erupted at airports, already notorious centers for human misery, to show disgust for Trump's executive order, which has earned the false title of a Muslim ban. Whether in New York or in Chicago, demonstrators made it clear that they thought Trump's move to temporarily block migration from these nations went against American principles and laws. So apparently it's against American principles to be for border enforcement. I mean, I do not know of what other laws the idea of of some certain border restrictions or travel bans might come in conflict with. But as far as American principles go, well, being for strong borders, I would tend to disagree. According to these demonstrators, preventing anyone from coming to this country based on their nation of origin or their religion was prohibited by both the Constitution and our American values. Okay, so if the travel ban instituted by Trump was really against all people of a certain religion, well, then you would have people not be allowed coming from Myanmar, Bangladesh, not allowed to come from Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and many other countries like that. But last I checked, the Muslim ban, it only affects like, what is it, like 4 to 6 countries that are majority Muslim, maybe 7. One of those being Indonesia. I think Syria and Libya are a couple others, and I can't remember all the other countries off the top of my head, honestly. So, obviously, there are issues that arise with Trump's order. Travelers with citizenship in one of the 7 banned nations, but okay, so there it is. It's 7 nations. Okay, thank you, Daily Caller, for clarifying that for me. But permanent green cards in the U.S. were detained, which was one of the reasons a New York judge halted the president's action. That measure may be beyond the original intent of the executive order, and the White House has already indicated that they are changing course on stopping green card holders from entering the country. There's also the perception that the law unfairly targets an entire religion and bans its adherents from America. However, the order only affects, temporarily to boot, a small percentage of the world's Muslims and is based on national origin, not religion. In many ways, it's only an expansion of Barack Obama's 2011 executive order banning Iraqi refugees from the U.S. For 6 months over terror concerns. Related, majority of world's Muslims untouched by Trump visa ban. Shockingly, there were no hysterical airport protests then. While concerns over green card holders and targeting a religion were aired amid the demonstrations, the San Francisco protesters took it a step further by explicitly calling for open borders, the eradication of the nation state, and needless to say, the total non-enforcement of immigration law. On Sunday, they had toned down "fuck deportations" to stop the deportations. Okay, so they're like getting milder on their language, but that does not necessarily change their message. It seems that the West Coast demonstrators were more blunt in expressing the moral thrust of those gathering at America's transportation hubs. Rather than a squabble over the semantics of immigration law, the guiding principles of the protest apparently see open borders as morally desirable and that no person should be refused entry to the U.S. Would that include former felons like murderers, thieves, and rapists, and maybe even terrorists? Those people should be allowed into the U.S. as well? I mean, if you say no to that, well, then you are for border securities, person. Securities. The hashtag of this movement is no ban, no wall. Hashtag no ban, no wall. Which isn't too far away from hashtag no restrictions, no border. The inevitable signs lecturing the American public that no person is illegal were out in full force, suggesting everyone has the right to come to this country. The reason why that the term illegal immigration is a thing, and I cannot believe that I have to like reiterate this again. It's not necessarily to say that a person is illegal, but that the person is committing an illegal act. An illegal immigrant or illegal alien, which is another term for it, is a way to define the type of crime that they are committing. And that is either they're immigrating into the country illegally or they're staying in the country illegally. In other words, they stayed with an expired visa. Excuse me. What's been elevated in these demonstrations and the growing support on the left for what essentially amounts to open borders, a proposal once only associated with anarchists and fringe libertarians, now it looks like the hot new position of woke progressives. There's that word, woke. That's a major change from only a few months ago. During the election, fact checkers fell over themselves to wag their fingers at Trump and his supporters for claiming Hillary Clinton-backed open borders. Even though she gave a whole speech where she declared how she dreamed of an open borders future, Clinton herself at least put up the pretense she cared about immigration and said she was not for open borders. Okay, so yeah, in other words, Clinton was committing doublespeak. That pretense appears no longer needed. The protesters don't seem to want any restrictions on immigration or enforcement of our present laws. All refugees are welcome. All illegals should be given citizenship. Banning people from this country unless they're white racists is absolutely wrong. This is the rhetoric emerging from the airport protests and which will likely shape our political discourse over the coming years. In years past, Democrats and liberals would argue that they believe in strong security measures when it came to immigration. They supported the construction of a border wall in 2006 and agreed to hiring more border security to put an end to illegal immigration in 2013 as a part of the Gang of Eight deal. Now these measures are equated with fascism in the liberal discourse of 2017. The left is now staking the ground that immigration is the core principle of America and newcomers must be welcome. Regardless if they come from a country that is producing a disturbing high number of jihadis related. The Statue of Liberty poem is now a weapon in America's culture war. The lionization of the airport protests by the media and celebrities only further enshrines open borders as the emerging consensus of the left. To think otherwise is un-American, apparently. One wonders how open borders is as American as apple pie will pair with the leftist notion that America is also based on white supremacy. Last weekend shows a nation that is drawing very sharp battle. Okay, let me reread that. Excuse me. Last weekend shows a nation that is drawing very sharp battle lines over the issue of immigration, with one side favoring open borders and the other side wanting immigration significantly curtailed, or even immigration significantly just full out cut off, which there are those a few people out there. The days when the center-right and center-left would dream of common-sense immigration reform appear to be vanishing amid a cacophony, I do not know how you pronounce that, cacophony, I don't know, of no borders, no nations chance. End of article. And so here's another article. I mean, it has like a little slideshow. This is from the Huffington Post. Huffington Post, leftist outlet that is chanting for open borders. Another piece of evidence against Sahil on the claim that it's a straw man to say the left wants open borders. Again, to reiterate, the left wants open borders. That's an over-exaggeration, an overly broad generalizing exaggeration. But it's not entirely untrue, as Sahil was making it out to be with Dave Rubin. When, in fact, going off of these two articles, these three articles, it is not completely untrue. 16 reasons why opening our borders makes more sense than militarizing them. I don't think anybody necessarily wants to militarize our borders. I mean, unless we like come out, unless it comes to full-out war with Mexico, I don't think anyone wants to militarize our borders, but enforce them. So, goofy language right there. One could almost say that it's even a straw man by this Huffington Post writer, Rock, however you pronounce that. What would happen if the United States suddenly stopped building walls and instead flung open its borders, not unlike the European Union has done among the member countries of the common market? Conservatives malign the notion, and liberals, even radical ones, haven't exactly embraced the open borders concept. But the idea isn't as radical as it may seem. Okay, well, that's your opinion. For most of its history, the United States has had, for all practical purposes, open borders, according to University of San Francisco law professor Bill Hing. Really, the United States was an open border situation worldwide up through the early 1900s, except for Asians. Hing told the Huffington Post there were Asian exclusion laws, but if you put that aside, it was open borders for the rest of the world. Okay, and I do not see how that should reflect on how we should have open borders, period. I mean, for all you know, people who look at this policy might disagree with the past or of what we did in the past. And say that even for the context of the time, that they shouldn't have had open borders. So it's not a complete and utter debunkery of why people should be for open borders. And here's a little graph that has little pieces of information on it that goes more in depth on the reasoning for why we should put, excuse me, of why we supposedly should have open borders. And maybe I'll go like through this article in a later stream responding to it. But for right now, that's not really the point of this episode of Strike Force. The purpose of this episode of Strike Force is mainly to say that Sahil, there are some people on the left, many people on the left, that do want open borders. So Dave Rubin was not strawmanning. Maybe a little bit exaggerative, but he wasn't strawmanning. Okay. So, now I'm all alone, and so, okay. I guess we'll talk more about the issue of immigration as we go to another Daily Caller article that goes covering the comments from a Democratic representative talking about the child migrant crisis for Obama's time. Second. Oh, okay. 1 second, I'm going to like refresh a page here and then I'll get on to reading. All right. So anyway, this being basically an extension of the issue that I have talked about before in recent live streams about the child migrant crisis of how children are being caged up and whatnot. But it just kind of, this is an article that exposes the irony of when it comes to outrage. Like you hear people being outraged of the whole separation of children from their parents with our current immigration policy, when really Obama was doing the same thing. And there is like little to no criticism towards Obama from the Democrats when it comes to this. But here's the piece of evidence. Democratic representative admits the child migrant crisis was kept very quiet under the Obama administration. Democratic Texas Representative Henry Kuehler admitted Saturday that the Obama administration attempted to cover up the child migrant crisis occurring at the southern border. It was kept very quiet under the Obama administration. There were large numbers of people coming in. The Obama administration was trying to keep this quiet, Kuehler told CNN's Frederica Whitfield. Excuse me. Whitfield displayed a 2014 image of migrant children held in cages at a detention center. And Kuehler said that he released similar photos of children separated from their parents. Kuehler added that the number of children being held at the border right now is similar to the amount during the Obama administration. We still see the numbers, he said, adding that not all of them are being separated. Some of them are coming alone. Keep in mind that under the law, you can separate a child if that person, the adult, is not the real parent or the custodian, because sometimes we see situations where they'll bring a child because they know of the policy that we have over here with children. Kuehler scrutinized the zero-tolerance policy of forced separation, suggesting criminal adult immigrants have previously taken advantage of it. Okay, and I thought on the whole separation of children from their criminal illegal immigrant parents is, I don't know, maybe somebody can make the case that we could possibly prosecute the illegal immigrant parents whilst not separating them from their parents, but it just seems quite ironic for me. To me, that we see people like being critical of the idea of children being separated from their parents when it comes to immigration, but what about when it comes to the issue of when it comes to like DUI cases, manslaughter, rape, and other such crimes that are not immigration related, and yet we separate children from their parents in those cases, but it's okay if we do that. It just seems slightly ironic to me and to many other people who are talking about this issue. All right, so how long is this article? It's very quiet right now since I don't have anyone else to help back me up. No co-hosts and whatnot. All right. This is from Yahoo News. This is an article that S-Man Speaks actually linked to me that's talking about the economic effect of Trump's Space Force. Okay, actually, it's not really Yahoo News. It's more precisely from Business Insider. My guess is that Yahoo, they just share other people's articles onto their, or other websites' articles onto their website to help spread the news and whatnot. But that's cool. Trump's Space Force could fuel a new $1 trillion economy, Morgan Stanley says. This should be interesting. If President Donald Trump successfully organizes his so-called Space Force, it could speed up investment in what Morgan Stanley sees as the next $1 trillion economy. In a note to clients Friday, the bank doubled down on its intergalactic thesis from last October, saying the Space Force could address critical vulnerabilities in national security, raising investor awareness in the formation of what we see as the next $1 trillion economy. Morgan Stanley has already identified 20 stocks staking their place in the space race and says it's monitoring 100 other private companies across sectors, including satellite internet, rockets, space tourism, and asteroid mining as the push to pioneer this new frontier. As the push to pioneer this new frontier heats up. Our conversations with various actors, current and retired in the U.S. government, military, and intelligence community, excuse me, let me reread that. Our conversations with various actors, current and retired in the U.S. government, military, and intelligence communities overwhelmingly indicate that space is an area where we will see significant development. A team of analysts led by Adam Jonas, the bank's autos analyst, wrote in Friday's note, this development could enhance U.S. technological leadership and address vulnerabilities in surveillance, mission deployment, cyber, and AI. Space is already a $350 billion economy, or roughly 0.5% of the world's GDP. The bank estimates, and as more investments pour into technologies like reusable rockets that make space exploration cheaper, that economy could grow to $1 trillion, especially as countries recognize the need for a space presence to maintain national security. Still, though, it's not clear how exactly the Space Force, quote-unquote, might come about. And I think Sir Conservatarian is right in the last action of Strike Force that I had, that it should be called Space Corps, not Space Force, because Space Force just sounds like a flimsy name. Or even which branch of the current military it may fall under. But Morgan Stanley says it could actually be a net positive for the Department of Defense. Based on conversations with some Washington insiders, establishing a Space Force, okay, why are you using Washington? Well, okay. It says Washington insiders, and when I first read that, I was thinking, oh, they're talking about establishment politicians, but I guess not all Washington insiders would end up being just a bunch of establishment politicians. They might just be people like on the inside of Washington who are coming outside with some inside information. Based on conversations with some Washington insiders, not necessarily insider politicians, not necessarily establishment politicians, establishing a Space Force as a standalone military branch, while potentially contentious, could be overall beneficial for the U.S. Defense Department, said Morgan Stanley. That said, the president must now garner the support of Congress to move on the initiative through both funding and authorization. That last part may prove difficult, but the president seemed committed to the idea when he signed a space policy directive last week. It is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. President Trump said at the time, we must have American dominance in space. We are going to have the Air Force and we are going to have the Space Force, separate but equal. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that if you're going to make a Space Force or Space Corps, whatever, that you can like merge the Space and Air Force into one and have like these hybrid ships that can go both in the regular aerial atmosphere of the Earth and also fly into space. Like give them hybrid capabilities to both be in the regular airspace and the space, like outer space. Okay, 1 second. Excuse me. All right. So this from Avik Roy of Forbes magazine. Now, any of you who has watched my show for a little while knows that I like Avik Roy. And by the way, I guess I should say this. There's nothing new that is happening in the chat right now, in the live chat. The new Senate Republican bill will transform American health care. So I found this pretty interesting, and so I just wanted to read it for today. The hotly anticipated Senate Republican health care bill came out on Thursday morning. The airwaves quickly filled up with predictable talking points from both sides. But once the what is this? Oh. Okay, that's an older article that I'd already read, so we're going to close that out. The hotly anticipated Senate Republican health care bill came out on Thursday morning. The airwaves quickly filled up with predictable talking points from both sides. But once the dust settles, it will emerge that the Senate bill will have far-reaching effects on American health care for the better. Substantial improvements to the House bill. In March, when House Republicans published their bill to replace Obamacare, the American Health Care Act, I described it in Forbes this way, GOP's Obamacare replacement will make coverage unaffordable for millions. Otherwise, it's great. Okay? I meant it. There were great things about the House bill, in particular its far-reaching reforms of the Medicaid program. But Paul Ryan's bill contained a fatal flaw. Its flat tax credits, which provided identical assistance to the poor and the wealthy, would price millions of near-elderly, low-income workers out of the insurance market and trap millions more in poverty. Okay. I think this is talking about... I'm sorry, I'm trying to like comprehend this this graph right here. Net annual premium inclusive of subsidy, Affordable Health Care Act benefit cliff, annual income of policyholder. Wait. Oh, ACA. No. The blue line here is Obamacare. Excuse me. The green line here is the new Health Care Act. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, buried in the House bill was a way out of the morass, however you pronounce that. Fortunately, buried in the House bill was a way out of the morass. I would like some more ass. Section 202 of the bill contains a transitional schedule of tax credits that was meant to serve as a bridge between the old Obamacare system ending in 2017 and the new Paul Ryan system beginning in 2020. It turns out that if you simply kept that bridge in force and tossed overboard the Paul Ryan flat tax credit, you'd solve all of these problems with the House bill. By making that change, the near elderly working poor would be able to afford coverage and the poverty trap would be eliminated. And that's precisely what the Senate bill did. Section 102 of the Senate bill, the Better Care Reconciliation Act of 2017, closely mirrors Section 202 of the House bill, with age and means-tested tax credits up to 350% of the federal poverty level. Making this change not only solves the problems I described above, it also makes it easier to reform the Medicaid program. And I think that we can all pretty much objectively agree that there are some reforms that are needed of Medicaid and Medicare for that matter. I mean, it's just generally what I hear about how they're insufficient and whatnot. I don't know specifics about how they're insufficient, but I just know it as a general statement. Real Medicaid reforms. The Senate bill includes and refines the best part of the House bill. Its reforms of Medicaid. The dysfunctional government-run healthcare program for the poor, whose enrollees have no better health outcomes than the uninsured. Because the Senate bill's tax credits are robustly means-tested and available to those below the poverty line, the bill is able to repeal Obamacare's Medicaid expansion while offering higher quality coverage to individuals who signed up for Medicaid under the expansion. I'm sorry. Because the Senate bill is tax credits. Okay. I mean, I guess I'm not quite comprehending this entire article. I mean, that's the thing with a lot of Forbes magazine articles, especially with the stuff that comes from Avik Roy. Like, you have to have, like, a very good reading comprehension skill to be able to comprehend of what he's saying. Or know some inside information about what he's talking about. The reason that Medicaid's health outcomes are so poor is because the outdated 1965 Medicaid law places a laundry list of constraints on states' ability to manage their Medicaid programs. Okay. That I can comprehend very well. I mean, if you have like some federal bill that is restricting state powers in this way, well then, and then you have the new new healthcare bill from the Republicans that is being instituted to pull back those constraints on the states. Well, then I'm all for that. As a result, the main tools states have to keep Medicaid costs under control is to pay doctors and hospitals less and less each year for the same care. Hence, many doctors don't take Medicaid, and Medicaid enrollees struggle to gain access to care. The Better Care Reconciliation Act of 2017 addresses these problems in several ways. First, the bill repeals Obamacare's Medicaid expansion and replaces it with tax credits so that low-income Americans can buy the coverage of their choice at an affordable price. Okay. So it gives like tax benefits so that people can purchase their own health care, is what I'm getting from that. And that's what I would like to see more of. Individuals within our country taking more responsibility for their own health care and their own finances and whatnot. Second, the bill gives states a new set of tools to make their Medicaid programs. For example, under Obamacare, states are only allowed to check if someone is eligible for Medicaid once a year, even if that enrollee has moved to a different state or becomes no longer eligible or is no longer alive. Jonathan Ingram of the Foundation for Government Accountability in a recent report recommended allowing states to redetermine eligibility more frequently and thereby culling their roles of ineligible individuals. Third, the bill puts the legacy Medicaid program on a long-term per capita cap tied to tied to medical inflation through 2025 and conventional inflation CPI-U thereafter. This change is important because Medicaid per enrollee spending is growing at a slightly slower rate than Medicaid inflation. Hence, making the program sustainable requires the use of CPI-U. The fiscal sustainability of Medicaid is essentially to making sure that those who depend on the program can know it will be there for them in the future. Right? Innovation at the state level. A third area where the Senate bill does extremely well is in giving states the latitude to come up with new ways to serve their needy populations with better results and lower costs. Okay? We've talked already about the new flexibility that states will have with their Medicaid programs. They'll have even more flexibility to open up their private insurance markets to innovation and competition through a new set of Section 1332, and which I approve of. More open, free market, and private sector innovations and whatnot. Waivers in which the validity of the waiver applications will be assumed by the federal government so long as the plan doesn't increase federal spending. Furthermore, the bill offers states around $100 billion in stability and innovation grants that states can use to shore up their insurance markets by providing extra assistance to the needy or the sick. Okay, so long as the plan doesn't increase federal spending. Yeah, and I'm all for that. Like, $20 trillion debt and an almost $500 billion deficit. We don't need to increase our spending anymore. So that's another pro of this. The Senate must fix, The Senate must fix its individual mandate replacement. Okay. So the individual mandate implemented by Obamacare was repealed, but the replacement for it is insufficient, is what Avik Roy is saying. There's one key flaw in the Senate bill. It had been originally reported that the bill would contain a 6-month waiting period for those who did not sign up during open enrollment each winter. Such a waiting period is important to ensure that people don't jump in and out of the insurance pool when they're sick or healthy, respectively. But no such waiting period was included in the bill reportedly because the Senate is still trying to work out how such a waiting period would work within Senate parliamentary rules. That will worsen the bill's score from the Congressional Budget Office, which is already likely to claim that the bill will cover at least 18 million fewer Americans. I got a question. Is that 18 fewer Americans that don't want health insurance in the first place? Because I myself only just recently got health insurance, but I wasn't all giddy about getting health insurance. I only got it mostly just to avoid the ever-increasing penalty of the individual mandate, you know? So that kind of is, and 18 million fewer Americans. I think last I checked that there were like 23 million added Americans who were enrolled since the implementation of Obamacare. And now I think it's like something around 30 million who are now no longer uninsured. Or that's only 30 million who are still currently uninsured, whereas before it was 50 million who were uninsured. And we also have to keep in mind that some of those 50 million who were uninsured, some of them were people who didn't want to be insured. So those 18 million fewer Americans are those, for the most part, people who wanted to be insured or not be insured. Due to the CBO's belief that repealing the individual mandate will alone have that effect. Well, of course. I mean, if people no longer have the individual mandate penalizing them and they don't want health insurance in the first place, of course they're going to drop out. Addressing right-wing complaints. Some on the right are complaining that the Better Care Reconciliation Act doesn't do enough to repeal Obamacare, echoing those on the left in 2010 who complained that Obamacare wasn't a single-payer bill. Yeah, like Bernie Sanders, for example. Full repeal was never going to be possible in a Senate where Republicans did not control 60 votes. And furthermore, we have learned that moderate Republicans in both the House and the Senate have no appetite to fully deregulate Obamacare at the federal level. But any Republican conservative in the Senate who is thinking of voting no on this bill, how many times in your life will you have the opportunity to vote for a bill that fundamentally transforms two entitlement programs? How often will you get to vote for a bill that cuts spending by hundreds of billions of dollars? How often will you get a chance to make a difference for millions of your constituents who are struggling under the weight of rising premiums and exploding deductibles? As Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, put it on Thursday, it's time to put up or shut up. Yeah, because even I, as a conservative libertarian, can admit that that you're not going to get everything in the healthcare debate. I mean, it's one of the more contentious debates in the country. I mean, when it comes to gun rights, that's more easily won by the right. When it comes to drugs and sexuality, that's more easily won by the left. But when it comes to healthcare, that's a pretty mixed debate, I say. I mean, I don't care if if people like Cult of Ham like to act like it's all objective and whatnot. But anyway, that's the end of that article. I'm going to stop screen sharing. And so there is still nothing new in the chat. I guess I kind of hosted a boring episode of Strike Force. I mean, I tried, people, so sorry. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And again, I have to re-emphasize, the 18 million people who will drop out of health coverage, and then you go following that up with, that's due to the fact that repealing the individual mandate will affect that. Well, of course it will. If people are only having insurance because they realize that they'll be penalized by the individual mandate, but then when they, in the first place, don't want health insurance, then of course they're going to drop out. So that's a bit of a non-issue in my opinion. But anyway, that's all I have to say for this episode of Strike Force. Wish I could have done better. Sorry for anyone who has watched this fully. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Yeah, I got nothing more. I guess I'll just wrap this up. Thank you for watching, everyone who has watched this in full. And so I am the Dark Conservatarian. Thank you all for watching, and God bless.